All right. And now we wait for our friends to join us. All right, folks are popping in. Welcome, everyone. It's great to see you. As you're coming in, feel free to say hello. Let us know where you're from and what you're hoping to hear us cover. Because if there's something new in the chat that we don't already have in the deck, we can come back to it later. Hello, Alexis. Welcome. We'll give it about one more minute and then we will go ahead and get started. Oh, hi, Lori. Good to see you. I hope you're staying cool down there because it's hot in Virginia, so I'm sure it's pretty toasty in Boca. Hi, Caroline. Welcome. Also in a nice toasty place. Okay, it is 1:02, so I think we are good to kick off. Welcome to our session on enrolling students in the zero-click era. Zero-click as a concept is something I personally have been following for some time. So thank you to Amanda Natividad from SparkToro for coining that term. But we're going to get into that with you with some big changes that have happened with Google, what they mean, what you should do, and which channels you should double down on in the wake of that. But before we get into the content, housekeeping, super important. The webinar is being recorded, so if you come in late or miss something, don't worry about it. We've got you. We'll be sending that to you via email tomorrow. If you have a question or want to contribute, the chat and Q&A are on the right side of your screen. Ask questions at any time. You don't have to hold them until the end. We can always, take a peek, pause, address your questions in real time, or let you know if you've mentioned something that's coming up later. Also, we'll check both the chat and the Q&A because sometimes it's just easier to drop something into the chat, and that is okay. So, who are we? I'm Angela. I'm the head of marketing at Halda, and I am so grateful to be here with Granit again. This is our second webinar together on this topic, and he is so brilliant. I learn from him every time we talk. I'll let him do a quick intro for himself, but I'm excited for all of you to learn from him today too.
Thanks a lot for the kind words, Angela. Hey everyone, my name is Granit. I'm the co-founder and chief strategy officer here at Manaferra. Been doing SEO for the past 16, almost 17 years now. A fun fact, I actually started my career doing a project for the South Africa World Cup back in 2010. That wasn't my first SEO project, but was my first SEO project that actually delivered. And then I saw the impact of SEO. So I think this is like a full circle moment here now with the World Cup happening, an amazing event, and I'm happy to be here.
I love that. That is a huge full circle moment. That's incredible. So we're going to split this into two different places, even though, I might chime in while Granit's speaking, he might chime in while I'm speaking, but he is going to cover the earned portion of this and really dig into the AI search components and these Google changes. I'm going to chime in and talk about the owned portion of this before we wrap, and then we'll take any questions that don't get asked over the course of the session. So I'm going to let Granit kick us off and let me know when you're ready for me to advance the slide. I'm ready.
Perfect. So everyone should be seeing my slides now. Well, I want to start by saying that I love that we're covering this topic, Angela. I think that in our industry, we've been talking about AI search a lot. There's no lack of content out there to kind of like covering it from different angles. But I think zero-click concept is such an important concept that it hasn't been covered enough. And it actually impacts a lot this very important marketing channel for our industry. As an industry, we are known to spend a lot in search marketing. Organic and paid are both very important. But when we look at what's currently happening in the industry, like the search behavior changing, the technology behind it, and now searching for something doesn't give you a list of links, but you see an AI answer layer on top of that, it has implications. Well, the key implication here is that we are getting fewer clicks to our sites because the users are happy with what they're seeing in the answers. The AI generated answer is answering their intent, a lot of answering words here. And the most important thing is that we need to communicate this. We need to communicate this to our team, but most importantly to the leadership and what this means in terms of like the KPIs that we're tracking, what was important before and what is important going forward. Because it's not just like an SEO problem or like AI search topic. It's becoming an enrollment problem. Google just had its Google I/O conference late last May, like about 2 months ago, and I love this quote from the event. They said, "All search is AI search," and that's actually true. Our students who we're targeting, they're searching more than ever, but they're clicking less than ever. They're getting their answers, things like your tuition, deadlines, how you compare, right inside search and AI tools, and they don't feel the need to click on your site. And this is what we're calling the zero-click search, and it's becoming an enrollment problem because all of our like strategies and kind of like the funnels and everything are built in the old way, like getting the people to our site uh, and then converting them. And what happens when they are not coming to our site as kind of like as often as they did before? And it's happening a lot. According to the Pew Research Center, over 60% of Americans read AI summaries in search results. So this means they are really engaging with this feature. 40% of them are using chatbots for search, which makes this LLM technology kind of like the most important and most common activity in these AI chatbots is actually information lookup. And this is also like very important. ChatGPT remains the most widely used chatbot by a wide margin, and is followed by Gemini. And I want to stay a bit here. When we talk about increasing our AI visibility and what's happening and the zero click concept and everything, we talk about the AI platforms and we count them starting by ChatGPT, Gemini, but then we say Cloud, Copilot, Perplexity, and etc. I just want to say here that for us as an industry, for enrollment marketing, there are only two platforms from an LLM point of view. There are only two platforms that actually matter. It's ChatGPT and Gemini. These are the two platforms that are actually going after the consumers. When you think of Copilot and Cloud, these are also widely used, but more on the enterprise slash productivity side of it, and not necessarily for information lookup for search, which is kind of like what our target audience does the most. So let's talk about what's changed in Google, because there was a lot of news. You saw a lot of headlines saying that Google has become AI only. And that is true to an extent, but not really. The biggest change here is actually the something that is quite technical. Is their search box. It's like we don't really think about it, but it's like where we start searching. It's kind of like that experience that funnels us down to the search results page. And what happened is that they kind of like changed the technology in the background, and now it's like an AI powered search box. Like, and what they're trying to do here is, you know how like when we go to ChatGPT, like our instinct is to search in a more conversational way. Same as with Gemini and other the chat AI chatbots. But when we go to Google, we reverse to like keyword style searching, because that's how we've used Google for decades. And Google, like the biggest thing that Google is trying to do right now is to change that. Because in the past we used keywords because Google algorithm was built in a way that that's how you were able to get the best results by using actual keywords. If you search like in full sentences, Google would get confused. But the technology has advanced. Now it's powered by Gemini, and Google wants to let you know that you can actually have conversations with Google. You can ask conversational style questions on Google, and this kind of like layout change and the technology in the backend is trying to point in that direction. The second thing is we've seen AI overviews for the past 2.5 years kind of like dominate more and more search results pages. Uh, Now what's happening is that before you would see the AI overview, it was like a static AI generated response, and then you would get the 10 blue links below, ads and other sub features. Today you can click on the AI overview, and now you'll see a feature that allows you to ask follow-up questions to that answer that the AI has generated. And it's great because in the past, if you wanted to ask follow-up questions, you would have to do different searches. But here, you can save the context, you can save the history, and by asking follow-up questions, you kind of like are funneled down to the AI mode, which is like the product that Google is pushing a lot. And just recently, they announced that it's being used by more than 1 billion users every month, which is quite significant. And the third thing is kind of like it's becoming the default experience. In the past, we would see lots of keywords still showing just the 10 blue links. AI overviews would be kind of like absent from that. But now it's hard to find a search that doesn't show you an AI overview, and it's kind of like it's becoming the default experience where you have AI generated answers appear before the blue links. And it's worth noting the 10 blue links are not going anyway. Yes, they are being pushed further below, but they are still there. And Google wants to kind of like make this point because if you don't have the 10 blue links, then kind of like they become from a search engine, they are transferred and considered to be an answer engine. So this brings us to like how it kind of like the old funnel versus the new funnel, and two other very important concepts that we want to cover today: owned versus earned. In the old funnel, our goal was in search was to rank, to show up, so we could get the click. And once we got the click, users would come to our site, and we would then convert them in there. The new funnel, because of the changes that are happening in the search technology, the platforms themselves, it changes the goals. The goal is not anymore to rank and get the click. It's to get recommended, because the clicks are almost kind of like going away. So we want to be the brand. We want to be the entity that gets recommended. So as a school, we are recommended. We get into their short list of consideration, and then when they are ready to take the next action, they come to our site and we capture them through own channels and we convert them. And to get recommended, it's very important to work in this part of earned marketing, let's call it that way, which means that getting recommended by third-party sources that AI trusts. This is what we mean by earned. By owned, we mean channels that we use where students return on purpose and we can convert them there. Things like email, SMS, landing pages, and more. And I want to show this example and kind of like build the case of why this is very important. In the past, as I said, old funnel, someone searching for MSW app deadline for this specific school, they wouldn't get the AI overview. They would get like just a link that sends to the most relevant page for their master's in social work. And in there, they would have the information on the application deadline. However, because Google is showing up AI overviews for these types of searches as well, it's not just the answer on your side that matters, it's also what Google is saying. So we received this email a couple of weeks ago, and they were saying like, we have a problem. Our current deadline on this page is June 15th, but Google AI reviews are listing it as our last date, with the previous date, May 15th. And this is kind of like problematic because we had a couple of students reaching out and saying that like is May 15th or is it like June 15th? And if we go back to the data, we saw that 60% of the users are actually engaging and reading the AI reviews. A lot of them are not clicking through. So some people might see this and decide to not consider you at all because they will say, okay, we are past deadline. We can't apply anymore, when actually you push the deadline. So it kind of like builds the case of how, yes, the content on our side is very important and we will need to keep that up to date. But we also have to think about what's being shared out there, and not just from like more like a conversions point of view, like when people are searching for the program, but then they have follow-up questions on that specific program as well. Because students are not going to Google and just asking like, what are the best MSW programs in this city or like near me or online, or like these more transactional type of searches, which we usually cover in these webinars. Our study from the State of College Search last year, and we are publishing the new annual report in a couple of weeks as well, shows that students, once they kind of like have put you in that consideration list, they ask follow-up questions and get their answers from AI. They're asking things like, how much does it cost? The application deadline, admission requirements, how does this program compare, and is it the right fit for me, etc. So it's important for us to keep track of like this type of answers and what they're saying. Are they correct? Are they up to date? Is there any misinformation? What sources is Google using when it's generating these answers? Is it our website, which increases the chances of the answer being correct? Or is it like third party web, which kind of like makes the whole situation a bit more tricky? And in this specific case, they were using their website as a source, but there was a technical issue that had prevented Google from visiting their site for a few days, actually like 2 3 weeks. And in between that, they had changed and updated their deadline. But since Google hadn't visited the page and didn't saw that the deadline has changed, they were still saying that the deadline was actually May 15th. So it kind of like makes it very important to check for the technical aspects of AI search, visibility, geo stuff, to make sure that we are not preventing Google. They have access and they're visiting our pages quite often to make sure that important information, if we update it on our site, is showing up in the AI answers as well. And it's important because people trust these answers that are being generated by AI. Lots of studies say that being named on an AI answer beats actually getting linked on it in the traditional Tableau links because it carries more influence. And when you think about where these recommendations that are coming from, which are like very strong recommendations, they're coming from review sites, rankings, discussion sites like Reddit and Quora, not necessarily just your program page. And AI obviously is going to see this recommendation from the third party site and it's going to come to your site as the source of truth to confirm the details. And we want to make sure that in both places, earned and owned, we are consistent in our messaging, in the information that we are sharing. That's why we need to make sure that we are auditing our visibility at all times. And the very first thing that you want to do is like start with the priority questions. I know for enrollment marketing, most of the time these priority questions are questions actually students actually ask about your programs, and especially when they're trying to find what is the right program for them. Things like best business schools for an MBA near me, and you will like if that is something that you want to track and see if you're showing up in your state. And you also want to see if, like, when people are searching for those prompts, for those questions, is your school being recommended? And this is why we actually just last week launched the Manaferra AI Index. If you haven't heard of it, I would strongly recommend you go and check it out. It's a free platform where you can just go enter your name and you can see the how often AI is recommending your school. And we'll see a quick demo in a second, but it also gives you a lot of information, and like not just about your school, but also like who else is being recommended for the same programs, who you're competing against. And you can also see, and this is very important, what are the sources that AI is trusting is trusting and is pulling from. These third-party pages that are feeding, that are influencing the recommendation. So if we go to the ai.manaferra.com, this is kind of like the example. You'll be able to see like the top schools by visibility, by state. But if you just want to check your school, we can do an example here. Let's go to Tulane University. And you'll see that we have data for this school. We have 1,530 unique answers where this school has been recommended. They are showing up for over 160 programs. Their national rank is 218. You can because this is we just launched it. This is the first edition, June. Every month we are going to refresh the data, so you'll be able to see what's your national rank and state rank every month, who you're competing against. We can see in Louisiana they're number 2, and who are who are competing on national level. What are their top programs? We can see the majority of their visibility is actually coming from their home state. They have some more visibility in Mississippi, but other states is just 1% and under. You can check the programs. But this is the report that I actually like. These are the schools that most often are being recommended when you're being recommended. What are the schools with whom you share, have the highest prompt overlap? You're showing up in the same prompts as them. Obviously, University of Minnesota is ranking for way more prompts. They're ranking for over 16,000 prompts, showing up in 16,000 answers. But for almost 500 of them, both of you are both of them are showing up in the same answers. You can see the top programs, undergraduate, graduate. And I want to go to these prompts because the biggest issue I see a lot of schools struggling with is actually coming up with the prompts that they need to check. And here you can see some prompts where you're ranking number one, or the prompt where you're ranking at the top position, but you're not number one, and who is winning for that, and the sources. Now, this is very relevant to our presentation today because it talks about owned versus earned citations. 48% of the times where Tulane is being recommended by AI is AI, in this case ChatGPT, is using their official website and subdomains. But in 52% of the cases is actually using other sites. And we have here, like when we looked at the report for the top graduate programs, we saw their healthcare administration. What you see here, the most cited page that got them the most highest visibility on AI is actually a page. And I'll share this here, is a page that's actually listing their Master of Healthcare Administration program. And Tulane is ranked number one in the Southern region. So going back to the presentation, this is kind of like just one way of kind of like finding this type of information. And we've had close to 3,000 schools, and that is going to grow as we continue. But the idea is that you need to start pulling some data and analyze this data, because these answers are having way more influence than you think in enrollment decisions today. And if you want to know, if you see that you're not showing up that often, there could be a couple of things why that's happening. Some of the things that on your side that could be preventing you is actually some technical things where you prevent these AI platforms and Google from visiting your pages, like no index settings. If your program pages are thin with content or like very vague, AI doesn't really like that. They want clear, concise content that they can trust and cite. And if you have outdated tuition or credit hour data, and if that is kind of like, and especially if you have conflicting information, different pages of your site, these LLMs tend to lose trust and do not use you as a source. Actually, they prefer third-party sites, which have carry their own risks. Or off-site, also when Google or ChatGPT decides to use third-party sites, there could be outdated or missing information on these third-party listings. There could be like the case where you have fewer reviews and mentions on the sites that AI trusts, and as a result, you don't really get recommended. And the fix is actually go out there and get your brand and your programs more mentioned on these sites that you see AI consistently using as citations and sources. So that is kind of like the fix. Like you need to be present. Like it's not just about optimizing your site. Yes, that is very important, but unfortunately, we have to also now think about what the rest of the web says about us and how it discusses us, and if it recommends us, because that is something that AI and Google are using as decision factors when deciding if you should make the list, if it should be the school that they actually recommend. So over to you, Angela.
Thank you. Thank you. And as usual, I am, even though I saw the slides in advance, you always add some additional color that's so helpful. And there are a couple of things that I think we can come back to. One is the difference in the different LLMs that students are actually using, because I think people have a tendency to put AI into just one giant bucket and
Yeah.
not think through the fact that there are actually different LLMs that people are using for different things. So knowing where to focus your energy is definitely important. The other, and this was shown on your site, which is so incredible. I got a preview of the site before it went live. And as I mentioned in the chat, we'll be including a link to it in the resources with the recording tomorrow, because it's such a great resource. But the volume of prompts is really important to be aware of, because whereas with your keywords, you can kind of get a nice, tight, defined list. And I think that's what people are used to in terms of search behavior. Trying to track the range of prompts that people are using to surface your school or not to surface your competitors is the alternative. It's really hard because there are so many. So it's really important to have the right tool, but it's also important to go in with that expectation. And I'll talk in a little bit about what you should be tracking now that these big changes are happening. This change has been ongoing, but it's especially important if you haven't already started to go down the path of prioritizing AI search and you don't know how to track it. when you get that inevitable question from, someone in leadership or your board or whoever the case may be, that's how are we doing with AI search? Because everybody's hearing about it. We want to make sure that you're prepared to answer those questions. So starting with the owned channel part of the story, if you have search sending fewer students to your site, that means that the channels that you fully control, which we referenced earlier, have to do more heavy lifting to move students through the funnel. So these are going to be the places that allow you to convert the interest that's generated by the earned visibility that Granite just went through. And there's a lot of data to support that. So SMS, email, and landing pages are the three channels we're going to focus on for the purposes of this discussion, because these are the three things that we find to be most effective in continuing to move students along. So SMS open rates hover around 98% overall, which is a massive number that I find myself citing quite a bit. And students who engage in two-way SMS with admissions are 7.5 times more likely to enroll than students who only receive one-way notifications. So there's a real opportunity there as long as students are getting responses to the questions they're asking and the messages that they're sending. With email, this is a big one because I think there's a persistent narrative out there that students don't read email, but they actually read the right ones. So 94% of Gen Z users use email, and 37% say that regular brand emails actually influence their decisions. So please don't let go of that channel. And then to add another feather in email's cap, across industries, email traffic converts on landing pages at 14%, which is almost double what you get from paid search. So that's not to say that you shouldn't do paid search at all. It's to say that all of these things belong in your toolbox. And there's just another case or argument for building your own channels and not just worrying about the ones that you're renting, so to speak. So if we think about how each of these channels can sort of absorb the demand that search used to deliver, the key here is that you have to make sure you're designing these experiences to convert instead of just providing information. So for us, we typically work as a conversion layer that can capture students once that earned visibility has done its job. So to see what this looks like in practice, here's a nice, lovely example. Let's say this student has landed on a high converting page. She completes an interactive form, and then you're off to the races with an ongoing conversation over text. And you can see that two-way communication is happening that we just talked about, but it's also layered over on-site search so that she can get the answers that she needs. So you have to make sure that once you've pulled those students in, knowing too that they're probably going to be a little bit higher intent coming from AI search than they might have been with more broad swaths, traditional keyword style searching, you have a real opportunity to pull them in and make sure that they're continuing to stay engaged and move through the funnel. So now we got to talk about what to track. So we've now seen that there are tons and tons and tons of prompts. And it's also important to know that part of that is due to the fact that AI queries change from person to person and week to week. And people almost never phrase AI prompts the same way, even when they have the same goal. So having a static position tracker isn't necessarily going to tell you the full story. That's one of the things that makes the tool that Granit shared earlier so useful and robust. You're going to have to go beyond what you're used to in terms of dashboarding for this. So what you're looking for now is a broader read that combines your earned visibility signals, like are we getting recommended, which sources are recommending us, with own channel performance. So you'll have to layer that on top. Are we actually converting the students who arrive on site once they get there? And try to keep things practical. The overarching goal is for you to have this steady, repeatable read instead of this long list of metrics like you might have been used to in the past. So this is a handy old versus new sort of scoreboard for you. So the card on the left represents traditional search visibility KPIs that you're probably used to. And the card on the right is what AI search is rewarding for you now. This is not to say that you should stop paying attention to everything on the left, but there is a transition, and being on the business slash vendor side, we're going through the same thing. Anyone who has a presence on the internet is experiencing this right now and trying to adjust. It's important to know that you're probably going to see some decline on the things on the left if you haven't already. If you haven't already, I'm very surprised because lots and lots of people have. And I would actually pay more attention to what's on the right because that's just more representative of student behavior right now. So this is a transition. And I'm going to go through what exactly this looks like. Your rank position is now more about how often AI is recommending you. And instead of focusing on organic clicks, you want to look at own channel conversion. So, how are your emails converting? How are your text messages converting? What's happening with your landing pages? The search engine results page click through is now share of AI answers versus competitors. That's a much better thing to pay attention to. Backlinks and domain authority is still important, but you also want to look at the sources that AI is citing. And then instead of having this single monthly rank check, you want to have that steady read across people and weeks since the answers are going to vary by student. So you still want to stay visible. It's not a complete 180, but you can expect that the signals that you have to pay attention now are just going to be different signals for what you're used to. And one thing we have for you, a lovely little nugget, in addition to the fabulous site that Granit shared, is a GEO audit template that you can use to turn this webinar into an actual plan, which we finish up. So we are going to share this deck with you tomorrow with the recording, and it's also going to have this handy link here that you can use to download that resource. So that's just another reason for you to open that email and maybe share it with a friend. So to wrap things up, to make sure that we have time for questions, it is not just about one or the other. Enrollment needs both the earned visibility piece, so AI can recommend you, and then strong own channels so you can convert the interest once that happens. Neither one is going to get you very far on its own. You really have to use the two together. And that is the strategy that this whole session was built to reinforce for you and hopefully teach you a lot about what Google just did. Now, if we've blown your minds and you have questions, now is the time to drop them into the Q&A or the chat. Otherwise, we will wrap up and let you all go on about your Thursday.
I'll just add till we see if we get any questions. If you haven't seen a decline in your organic traffic, that is happening because most of the organic traffic that you receive was actually branded traffic. People using Google to navigate to your site. But SEO was never about like keeping or growing that. That is actually like that. Yes, it's organic traffic, but it's benefiting from all the other marketing activities that you're doing in other channels. And people then are using Google just as a tool to come to your site. But SEO and GEO is about making sure you show up in front of your target audience, prospective students who are looking for the programs that you have to offer, but don't necessarily know that you exist or that you offer those programs. And it was the same with SEO as well. Like if you were showing up for those types of programs, or if you had a lot of like editorial or thought leadership traffic coming to your site from different types of content that you publish, that traffic, what we're seeing right now, is being decimated. 35 to 40% down already. And unfortunately, the trends show that this is going to continue in the future as well.
Yeah, that's really important to know. So if you do start to see that, if you haven't already, don't panic. Because this is something that just about everyone is experiencing. So it's not just you, and it's just another reason for you to take everything that we've covered today to heart. So It looks like we don't have any questions from the audience. So I think we can go ahead and wrap things up. But if you do have some questions that surface throughout the afternoon or overnight, feel free to reach out to either of us. I'll make sure our contact information is included in the follow-up email that you receive tomorrow. Oh, wait, we've got one. Yeah. We've got one coming in at the clutch. Gabriella wants to know what we think about building pages that answer lots of questions. Ooh, Granit, I'm going to let you take that one.
I'm seeing different organizations approach this differently. I'm not a fan, I'll be honest. Like there are some tools in the AI visibility tracking space that recommend you create a lot of sometimes AI generated content out there trying to uh, basically make sure that you cover everything out there. I'm more of a fan of what Halda does because Halda has this tool where users go and search and it actually collects a lot of data on like what the searches are about. And if you don't have that content on your site, it kind of like gives you like a nudge, say, hey, people are searching for this content and you don't have it, you should consider creating this content because like there is actual demand from the users. But if you're just trying to create content for the sake of trying to cover every single question out there and then just capture some of the traffic, this is short-term thinking. It will probably do you more harm in the future than good. So I'm not a fan. But if it's like the hold approach, where you kind of like you're getting interest, you're getting search happening, search demand happening, and then you kind of like have some editorial check on the content that's getting published, then I'm all for it.
It takes the guesswork out of trying to address those questions, which is a really nice sort of hack as you're going through this process.
Yep.
Great question, Gabriella. Anyone else before we wrap things up? Okay, beautiful. Well, thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Granit, again for hanging out with me for another webinar. It was such a treat. I learned a ton as always, and I think everyone who joined us today really enjoyed it. So thank you all again, and we will see you next month at our next webinar. Take care, y'all.
Thank you. Loved it. Bye.